Cory. So much.
Of
Thank you.
course. My pleasure. Thank you for
Yeah.
making it. I just want to show anyone from my side of the Substack world this beautiful new book of yours, Bold
Thank you,
Nothing.
brother.
Can't recommend it enough. Really can't
It's so
recommend it enough.
sweet.
Yeah, and
Mm.
it's, like this type of stuff that I like is I like stuff where there's actual depth and richness, something that's going to grow with people over time. And the stuff I like even more than that is stuff that's really layered because someone will go, and I think with your book for sure, and I think I'm certain of it, is that they'll read it. And then as they change, not only from the book, but just as life filters through them and they change, they will go back to read it and it will mean something completely new to them and they'll
Mm.
understand all these other layers in there and then they'll grow and they'll come back to it again and it'll just keep unfolding and unfolding. So I love books like that, and that's definitely what you have. Ironically, that's what you're holding. That's what I'm holding in my hands right now.
It's funny that you said all that because I was thinking about what we could talk about that would actually mean something to both of us and be fun for us. That isn't just about the book, but dovetails with. And I wrote the words writing from the heart of practice.
Mm,
That is what you do. And I want to tell our viewer, if you're watching or listening, that Cory's posts, when they come, and especially his posts on Substack, in my computer, I copy and paste the topic as well as the body of the Substack posts, which are never very long, and I put them into a text to my son. He always thanks me. It always means something to him. These are some of the most important communications that we have, and I can't tell him that. We're missing the whole ancestral being raised by your uncle business.
hmm
And you, in a way, are the uncle raising my kid over text through your words on Substack. I need to thank you for that explicitly.
Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
amazing. Yeah, that means so much to me. Thank you for sharing that. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really beautiful. It's so easy to, whenever you're writing things and just putting them out on the internet, as sure, like if you look at your analytics, they reach, one post reaches 20 million people or whatever, but you don't really like cognate that, and just like the actual kind of boots on the ground, real life impact is sometimes easy to forget about. So that's really beautiful. And that means so much to me. I'm a stoic person. I'm trying to emote as much as I can right now.
Listen, if you can reach the 19-year-old boys with your message, Cory Allen, you have done the world a great
Mm,
service.
amazing. Well, I
So
was a
it's
19 year
not nothing.
guy
I
when
remember. How old are you now? I don't know how old you are. How old are you?
I'm 43.
Great. Beautiful. So we've got a lot left in you.
Hypothetically, yeah, I'm gonna do my best.
I trust in my interviews about this book, whether somebody's interviewing me or I'm sort of welcoming someone else to talk about it. I trust in the oracle nature of the book
Mhm.
to open it up and see what I land on. I landed on the section called Nurturing Silence in chapter 4. Chapter 4 is about taking action. And when I say that, I mean, compassionate action or thoughtful, appropriate action, let's say. Nurturing silence is a section in which there are a lot of I statements in this section, which I don't typically make often in this book, but my editor really wanted me to tell some of my stories. And I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs because I think you and I will have a lot to talk about pursuant to what you said about books that are layered and deep. Many evenings of my childhood, I'm stationed at the top of the stairs, praying for peace in my house. I almost never let them know I'm here. I want my parents to have their privacy, quote unquote. I can feel the carpeting under my feet, my heart holding some notion that my peaceful, undetected presence will help them stop arguing. It's hard to listen. Somewhere in my young heart, I promise myself that decades from now, I won't visit if they keep up their bickering. As a little girl of 7 or 8 in my flannel flowered nightgown, I learned the meager but real comfort of my own inner peace. Sitting there offering presents to my parents without telling them, I begin learning how to be with discomfort without solving or changing it. I'm still a work in progress. This unintended silence practice from childhood has ferried me toward service, where my action is mostly listening. At the family shelter, where I facilitate meditation to calm the frayed nerves of the women temporarily housed there. At the level 2 penitentiary, where I guide yoga and meditation practice for the incarcerated gentlemen, in moments of attentive listening with my son's dearest friends. These simple offerings of presence to those I'm serving are always somehow returned to me, multiplied exponentially. And I'm not going to finish the section, but I just want to say I feel like somewhere in here, since I've opened to it in anticipation of our talk together, I wonder if this has anything to do with you or if there's any resonance for you, Cory. And if so, how might this be related to you in some way?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in there. I think from me observing your experience, your internal experience externally, and also just my own personal experience, of course. Yes. Um, First off, like you, I avoid talking about myself. So let me not use I statements. Let me talk about your experience a little bit. um, uh, that's a lot quite a through line. That's a lot to hold. That's very intense and powerful to experience what you described as a child and then relate silence and those moments of presence to that experience. Because if you unpack that just a tiny bit, hearing your parents argue and trying to get close to them and just listening, what you're doing is taking responsibility for hopefully being this loving node of existence because you're buying into, like, well, my parents both love me unconditionally, hypothetically. And if I can be by, then maybe my presence and the feeling of my presence will remind them of that love and somehow, help resolve the conflict and whatnot that's happening. And that's a lot to shoulder as a child, And of course it's not all intellectualized like that, but it's the the feelings and the intentions and the grasping and some of the desperation and the fear and all of that that are all coming together. It's quite intense. And I think through kind of the crucible, like being the crucible of fire, almost emotional fire, you having learned the power of silence, not only in what's available there, but also the level of depth and insight that can occur there in those moments too, is really quite beautiful. So I love that in terms of what you shared in the book. And yeah, I mean, also coming from having a lot of challenging formative experiences, uh, silence to me was not only a safe zone, but it did what really led to, I think, the opening of all of my work and world of ideas, which is realizing that my inner life is a sanctuary. So no matter what's happening outside of your skin, in the objective world, that your mind is yours, your mind is free, and that you can live in there. And um, fortunately, as I was living and start kind of retreating into my mind as a kid, I realized that there was a lot in there. And I started looking around
Mhm.
because I spent so much time in there. I was like, "Oh, this is a
Totally.
cool. This is a cool
Totally.
place. Look at all these
Yeah.
mental formations and sensations and the texture of my mind and um, all and how things are impermanent and like what's arising and how, oh, wait a second, there's a chain of command of like arising mental material information, my own mindful awareness of it, and then this process of deciding to externalize that. Or I can not externalize it. I can actually let go of impulses and reactions and even thoughts about myself and whatnot. So it was really a useful, I guess, chance or luck or fate or whatever that happened, that going into my mind and looking around and realizing the power of, looking inward and silence and presence.
Yeah. That's, it all comes through in your work, and it's most of the reason why I consistently share it with my kid because I can feel that, and I can feel his need for that, and his resonance with that. It's very clear that you're connected inwardly in that way. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah, what is
What's
I'm
interest
curious what all
Yeah.
that experience that you shared in your book, how do you think of that now as an adult woman and having, now having your own child and living through your own life? How does that arrive for you?
It's I cut myself off from reading the end of the chapter, but I do get into how it impacts the work that I'm doing in hospice and the work that I'm doing in the penitentiary and the work that I'm doing with my kid in some specificity. All of that made me into a person who could presence acute discomfort. And I now see that it was very important to my formation and very important to the people whom I get to serve now. That I was in those very uncomfortable moments and I couldn't do anything about it. And I was making up my healing as I went along, basically.
Mm,
I think if you're listening to us and you resonate with Corey's work, and maybe you resonate with mine too, you're we, I, I'm constantly healing myself. There isn't a moment that I'm not. And nobody's, people can point fingers at ways that they have healed. Even Corey, as astute as he is, he can't teach me how to heal myself, only I can do that. And in this passage, I feel I'm seeing now, since you're asking, from the perspective of 55, how that 7 or 8-year-old started to learn how to heal herself then.
mm.
And that's kind of profound. I never thought about it like that. Thank you for that wonderful question.
Yeah, of course. I'm that's my business. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned, that you're in this constant process of healing and, I think we all are. And I kind of take issue that, there's a lot of nuance here that we can get into. This probably is not the time or place for it, but even the idea of, quote unquote, healing a certain part of yourself, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that because um, if you have an injury, it doesn't mean you don't have a scar, and you can process it and you can release and you can move past. But we are the culmination of our experiences. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a beautiful part. It's what makes us human. And ultimately, it's what gives life meaning and purpose. So I'm curious whenever you say that you're constantly healing yourself on a day to day, what does that actually mean?
I just taught this meditation, facilitated this meditation here at this pretty large summit. It was early in the morning, and I thought, oh, great. We've got whatever, 50 cushions. There are like 20 people here. Perfect. Everybody started doubling up on your cushions. And then, sure enough, the whole room filled up, filled up, filled up. And I started talking, and I never quite, as you probably can imagine, I never quite know what's going to come out of my mouth. I have, my books in front of me. I have everything open on a beautiful piece of fabric, and I take my sort of book altar very seriously. And then I start talking, and it doesn't matter what's on the altar. Words are flowing through my face. And I started talking about building a mind that I can trust through the practice of stillness, of silent illumination. And I can get into that in a moment. But to your question, I think that you're correct. I don't know that there is a necessarily a healing that finishes, but I think the continuous and consistent process I'm in is one of trusting my mind and
Mm,
cultivating a mind that I can trust. And that's the healing. If one were to, look for a definition to that word on this day, in this hour, in this hotel room, um, that's what it feels like to me. Building a mind that I can rely on.
mm. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that you've put it into, you know, the terms of day to day too, because, I think that how growth and development and, ultimately, deliverance of self is usually framed in the social media and public sphere is really from almost like a consumerism perspective. It's like I will acquire big healing, as much as I.
Yes.
So it's like here are these
By
huge moments.
Thursday.
Totally. And like it's like it's packaged where it's like, okay, there are these like mountains that I have to overcome, these capital T traumas, And it's like, yeah, it's like those can exist for some of us. And I mean, I would argue that life be like mere existence is quite traumatic. And so we all need to try to work with recovering from that. Um, but the little tiny things, the day to day stuff, those can add up and be bigger than some of the big stuff that we tend to focus on because these pillars of our experience in our lives that we look to as like, oh, that was a traumatic experience, like, oh, that's where this core wound came from. Yes, those things are very important, but we've had time and resonance and a lot of time to contextualize those things, and so they become a bit more rigid, and they become somewhat apparent. I think that the small things that we carry with us and that arise that are new on the day to day are so important to work with and pay attention to because those things are occurring and influencing where our life actually happens, which is the intersection between our mind in the present moment and the future, what will happen next. And if we aren't navigating that intersection with clarity and self awareness, then the knock on effect that can come from being wrapped up in some of these, you know, traumas or pains or stuck points, whatever you want to call them, can be really, really, really powerful. So I think that just giving those small things in the day as much respect as we do our historical things is really important. I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Yeah. And I think to close, there's this point in the tradition, in the Zen tradition that I practice about intimacy with the moment, intimacy with reality, intimacy with oneself, as you mentioned just then. And I'm looking, this book is something that I have kept close for the last several years. Roshi Pat Ankyo O'Hara's book called Most Intimate. And she runs the Village Zendo, which is in New York City. I have several friends with whom she studied with. And, there's this reason for the word intimacy to be redefined. And it's what you just said. It's some sort of capacity to comprehend how every single small moment actually really does matter. Every single interaction really does matter. Every single move that I make is a reflection in some way of the values that I'm hosting in my body. We were talking about this on the retreat that I just left as well. And these values will come through in everything that I do, whether I'm careful or not. I'm always practicing something. And to be very, very intimate with these small moments, Corey Allen, the way that you are within yourself, what gives rise to all of the wisdom that you share, like really from your heart when you write, is that intimacy.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, I think that's, I like that you were talking about even if you're being careful, that those things will still come through because it's even in the carefulness though that ecosystem is working, and I think that like that's why it's so easy to see, or to me anyway, someone who isn't sharing from a genuine place, you know what I mean? And I think that if you're not going inward and looking deeper and trying to get to the root of not me but us, like we that's why, like, i'm I wouldn't dare compliment myself, but I will copy and paste what many people have told me, is that they're like, you're writing, it's wild how it appears right when I need it or whatever, and it's like, well, it's just because like there's a spectrum of human experiences that we all will experience not in the same linear fashion, but they will occur randomly based on the chance of our experience. And if you write to the heart of being human, then naturally those things will happen to arise at the right time. And I think that's why it's so important to like get to that stuff and focus on that. Yeah, I'm curious, you talking about intimacy, uh, being someone who is familiar with the lack of self. if you if you look inward and see that you're pretty much a witness, or you're the empty space in the camera lens, not the lens itself. um how do you relate self intimacy to your internal experience while also holding true the impermanent notion of your own identity? And sorry if that's too much of a question for this forum, but
That is a very Zen question, and I will run with it. Thank you for it. Yeah, I mean, that is the question. How do I maintain some semblance of some functional identity while knowing we're all going to die and it's not going to be long now? And that is kind of the question that I'm asking every day. I don't know that I have an answer for it per se today, but I do know that I'm always wrestling with it, that I feel better keeping the question close by doing the volunteer work and by staying close to people who are near their death. I feel better selfishly. I'll say that. Because I'm so close to it and I'm not running away from it anymore as I once did. And I
beautiful.
think that's how. Keep it close, keep impermanence close. And that, I mean, it's ultimately why you or I, Diego, any of our friends, why we meditate. Keep impermanence very close at hand. And every time we sit, we can watch the ridiculous cyclical nature of our thinking and see how these thoughts come and go so quickly, so cleanly. They come and you think it's everything. I think it's every single thing in my whole wide universe, this thought. And then suddenly it's gone and it's been replaced by another. And that is the nature of this life. And I think that's why we care so much about our practice. And that's where the good writing comes from, as you said. If you have a practice and you're writing from the heart of that practice, what you say will benefit and resonate with everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, I think of meditation these days as like a remembering practice. It's like you're just
Yeah.
remembering the foundation and seeing reality for what it is, because humans are such little novelty seekers that we get, enamored by the stuff, in our minds, and our attentions fill up, and just going back to meditate releases that, and you're like, oh, right, right, right. Here is nothing that I've been looking for. You know,
Here is the nothing I've been seeking.
yeah. And whenever you said, uh, that you're being close to people who were at the edge of death, and the emotion it evokes, that's a beautiful experience, and I have so much respect for you and someone like or Frank, that does that type of work, and Joan. But one of the things I really genuinely think about, and this could be a little dark, but like every person I encounter through the day, I'm like, oh man, that person is close to death. Like I think of, like, we all are close to death. You know what I mean? And I in my mind, I can't separate the space of now versus 10 or 20 or 30 years. That's nothing. That's no time in the course of the cosmic, history books. And I'm like, oh, holy smokes, we're all right there all the time. So what do we do with that information, right? Right? We treat the stranger, the person who frustrates us, the person who has ultimately a different set of preferences than we do, a different set of imprintations based on their past experiences, and the story that we're projecting on them, and we try and treat them with the same compassion and openness, and for who they are, as opposed to our idea of them, that we might someone who is laying in a hospital bed with stuff plugged into their arms. And
That's
that's what I
everything.
think about. Yeah.
It is what Frank has taught me. A weird thing happened this morning, and then we'll close. I was teaching in at Eudaimonia Summit in Florida, which is a pretty big summit, as I mentioned earlier. I had like 50 people in a meditation, and we're in sort of half of the conference room, and there's a pretty shoddy, flimsy wall separating us and the next class. And I don't know who's in there, but suddenly that class starts to talk and they're sort of moving around and we're practicing zazen, total stillness, silent illumination. It's pretty funny. I'm just going with it. There's construction behind us in the sort of hallways where the staff move. And at a certain point, I realize about midway through the meditation that next door to us is my very best friend teaching a sound and stretch class. She is the one for whom I shaved my head in 2021. She was in stage 4 cancer. She is now in remission. And it was her teaching next door. So I sort of gently explained this to the class in the middle. I said, "Hey, we're so lucky." I was just about to start complaining about the next door neighbors when it came to my attention that actually the person for whom I shaved my head is teaching next door. And the fact of her voice that she is even alive right now and that she is next door blessing us with her teaching that we can just barely hear, but enough. We can hear the energy of it. Everybody really appreciated that. We sort of worked it into our meditation at the very end as we are doing our last moments of sitting. She plays sound bowls, exalted. I can't tell you how beautiful. And then she begins singing this song that she sings with her 2 young kids every day. And it goes like this. Thank you for this day. Thank you for this body. Thank you for this life we get to live. And just sort of trails off. And we're all sitting there finishing our meditation show, and they're singing this to us. It was unbelievable. And it just makes me think, Cory, like how incredible it is. And as my partner James said, if you stay open and you don't sort of resist, you keep practicing, staying open when you want to close, open even to the fact of impermanence, you will be gifted with that kind of magnificence every time.
Absolutely.
That I just unbelievable, unbelievable. I will write about this at some point. It was too good. And the last question I have for you. When I talk about writing from the heart of practice, and right now I'm in the middle of this summit. Technically, I should be going back there. I think Rich Roll is doing something like I should be in there. All I want to do is write this experience. Can you please affirm that I should stay still in my quiet room and write this down instead of going and thinking like I'm going to miss something if I don't go?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, like, here's the thing. It's like, I think as a writer, being clear about input and output is really important. When
Mhm.
you're choosing to put things into your mind and when you're choosing to have things come out of your mind. And I will say that for anyone that's, since this is Substack, we could turn this to writing, really quickly. For anyone who's
Yeah.
writing, like, um, whenever you feel it arising, like that's the moment to do it because it's a thing trying to come out of you. And it doesn't even have to be like metaphysical. It's like when everything's clicking in your body, the subconscious speaking to the conscious mind, and a story is trying to emerge, midwife that thing out onto the page because like if you don't open the portal and you don't sit down and create the space for writing, you'll never have the brilliance come out because 10% of what you write is going to be genius, 10% is going to be bad, and 80% is going to be okay, right? So if you don't open the portal, you'll never have the chance that 10% that's great to come out. And so especially whenever you feel it, that's the most important thing because like think about the last 5 seminars you went to. Tell me the 10 things you remember from them. Yeah, you can't. But a piece that you wrote that's really important 10 years ago, you still remember, you know?
That's right. That's right. That's all I needed. Thanks, dude.
No, of course, please. I love
Self
whenever I
sleep.
was when I was a kid, read a lot of like William Burroughs and things of that nature. And I remember Burroughs said, he said, if you want to be a writer, you need to be comfortable and you have to want to spend hours and hours and hours in a room alone by yourself. And I thought, I could be a writer.
That works for me. That was most
So,
of my childhood, actually.
yeah, same. So,
Uh,
so please spend time in that room by yourself, write, and stay open, like we just talked about. And what will probably come next is something that you'll appreciate and it will make sense as to why you had the urge and needed to stay there and write.
to stay still.
Hmm.
If you are listening to us, I do have an episode of the Practice You podcast with Cory Allen that lit me up, and you can listen to it on my podcast page on my website. I want to encourage you to make sure that you subscribe to Cory's Substack because, as I mentioned, in case you came late, and I don't mind, his work is what I send to my kid. It's how, in some regard, it's how I parent my son, who's 19. And I've been sending Cory's work to my kid for years now, 3, 4, 5 years, however, whenever your book came out, Brave New You. I recommend that book for all ages, Brave New You by Cory Allen. And tell us what other projects you have cooking up aside from your genius Instagram so that I can share with my humans as well.
A lot of stuff on the horizon. I have my new book is coming out next year, and which I'm really excited about. It's called. I haven't actually mentioned anything about it really publicly, but it's called The Quiet Age, and it's
The Quiet Gauge.
age,
The
yeah, quiet.
Quiet Age. Beautiful. The Quiet Age. Yes.
Yes, reclaiming the quiet in our lives amongst the overwhelm that we're all experiencing. And then what do you do with that, right? I think that's the really important part of it. Then what? Yeah, but a lot of beautiful stuff in the rising. But I'll just say, everyone, please make sure and check out this book right now that we're talking about. Let me promote this book, and yeah, this is my recommendation right here. So
Yeah.
everyone, go check it out and support it. It's a beautiful piece of work, and
Thank you, brother.
congratulations! I'm excited for you and excited for people to read it.
I'm excited to be your case study for The Quiet Age as I turn this off and sit still and write that story down. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here. Those of you watching, thank you so much. Thank you.